thank you for asking me to speak, and thank you to Insight Drama for organising the conference, but also for organising this as part of a whole 18 months of hard work on the Facing the Gap project, which has had lots of different stages, of which this is the last stage. And thank you also to the two speakers before me, because I found them extremely interesting, and they both touched in a small way on things that I'm going to talk about myself. So I found that very interesting. So just a serious point to start with. I think you'd all agree with me that it's really important not to undermine learners and those who are coming across new skills and developing new skills for the first time. So you'll forgive me if I don't have a PowerPoint presentation this morning, because I really don't want to overshadow Chris and his presentation yesterday. Which, believe me, you have no idea. You have no idea. So my name is Ceri Townsend, and I'm a theatre designer, and I've worked with Big Brum since 1996. I designed most of the plays that Edward Bond wrote for Big Brum Theatre and Education, and also a couple for Caracostal, and one for Uniform Theatre in Malta. And as Adam said, I'm very proud that you all got to see the piece that I directed and designed as a co-production between Caracostal and Insight Drama. I'm also very privileged to work for Drama Rainbow in Beijing, for whom I illustrate children's books which accompany dramas and drama lessons that have been co-created by them with Chris Cooper. Today, however, I'm speaking on behalf of the Gap Arts Project. A bit about the background of that. In 2009, after running a youth theatre for Big Brum for 9 years, I decided to refound it as a theatre company, an independent theatre company, which we called Theatre Arc. And I began training young people who were members of that theatre, not only in performance and theatre arts, but also in management and fundraising, budgeting, project planning, facilitation, etc. And I did that because I was increasingly concerned at the very powerful message that young people seem to be picking up, that which was coming through the media and all forms of popular culture, that all they needed to do was to believe in themselves and to follow their dreams. And if they did that, they could fly and they could touch the sky. Well, no, R. Kelly, that's a lie. I wanted to help young people to live in the real world and to work in the real world of the arts and what it's really like, and to develop theatre for the real world and for real people and real audiences. So we decided to start again and to set up as a theatre company and learn exactly how to do that, and to make realistic preparations for a real future for them. That was 7 years ago, and I am immensely proud to say that two of those young people, who were at the time were a 13-year-old girl and a 15-year-old boy, worked really hard and took that mission on very seriously. And they developed amazing skills in drama and also developed drama facilitation skills. They really embraced the Bondian methodology we've been discussing this weekend. And they're still working for the company. And I'd like to introduce Maria, who's sitting there, who is now our company administrator. And Aaron at the back there, Aaron Gill, who is our creative producer. And between the three of us, we run the Gap Arts Project, which is an organisation that we run for young people, and apart from myself, is largely run by young people. And in 2014, we decided to rename the company after one of Bond's core concepts, which is the gap. And so the Gap Arts project began. So I've been invited to speak to you today about our experience about making a gap for young people in the city of Birmingham. Birmingham, you may or may not know, I think somebody might have said it at some point, but you may or may not know that it is the youngest, or as the city with the highest proportion of young people of all the cities in Europe. In fact, according to a report produced by the Birmingham Community Safety Partnership, whatever that is, in 2013, 46% of the whole population of Birmingham was under 30 years old. So you'd think that in a city like that, with so many young people, that there would be a wealth of resources and facilities and services that was specifically for those young people. But you would be wrong. The pretty poor youth services that we did have were pretty much cut to the bone after the 2008 financial crisis. And what remains there are three sort of municipal youth centres which are lime green, orange and purple plastic fixed seating with funky lime green, orange and purple plastic shapes on the walls and notices about who your community police liaison officer is and do you want to sign up for the table tennis team. There was no place, and those are dotted around the edges of the city, and there are no places in the city centre for young people where they can come from all parts of the city and get together. And across the whole city, there is no cultural or art space, creative space. And so with the setting up of our newly named company, The Gap, we also felt that was an extra dimension, that we needed to create a gap, physically, a space. And we were also saying, give me space, give us space. Recently, Maria did a little research going through our books and our finances. And over the last few years, she calculated that roughly 45% of our annual income was spent on hiring venues. And these were venues in the city centre because we are committed to making the Gap a citywide provision. So this money was going to the big cultural institutions in order for us to deliver our projects and perform our work publicly. And I'm not talking about theatres like this, with a stage and an auditorium and lights and technicians. I'm not even talking about studio theatres or even drama studios. I'm talking about an empty conference room or maybe a vacant rehearsal room. And even then, I'm not talking about, we had a run of a couple of months to do a full rehearsal production process or even a regular session once a week through the year. I'm talking about an odd day here or there, or half a day somewhere else, because we just couldn't afford anything else. So not only are the big cultural institutions getting the lion's share of public arts funding, but they're also getting 45% of the little that we got as well. And we're not the only small cultural institution that are experiencing that. And so there's a really big problem. I don't know if it's the same in other European cities, but it is in Britain. Space is an increasingly a big political issue. And the problem with young people, one of the problems with young people, and the problem with young people, of course, especially in a city where there are so many of them, is that they take up so much space with their bodies. In spite of thousands of years of the development of human civilization, we still haven't shrugged off the tendency, we haven't managed to overcome our territorialness. In fact, we've been discussing borders quite a bit this weekend and through this last week on the Youth Exchange. In fact, the emphasis on the division of space and the marking of boundaries and the proliferation of borders, fences, walls, is more prevalent and emotive a topic as ever. Every scrap of land and every square metre of space has been claimed and bounded by private property. And what we call public spaces, squares, marketplaces, high streets, are in fact private spaces. Our cities are designed by professionals whose expertise it is to calculate how to maximise the spend of those citizens passing through. As you know, as we all know, supermarket layouts are designed in order to get customers to spend the maximum amount of money. Well, so are high streets and public spaces. And our vertical spaces are colonised by advertising of consumer goods and products. And the whole confusion between who am I and what is my self-worth gets confused with do I have the right consumer products and have I got the right brand? So-called public space is all about extracting your cash and keeping you moving. And the problem is that young people don't have much cash and they don't want to keep moving. They want to stop. They want to meet and congregate and hang out and just be. And why shouldn't they? But as I said, these public spaces are private spaces, and like all private property, they enjoy maximum protection under the law. So more expertise is put to use in designing what's called defensive architecture. I don't know if you have such a concept here in Hungary. You do, you would know, yeah. So we've got walls with studs along, which are deliberately designed to stop young people from skateboarding, or walls with spikes to stop them from free running. You've got spikes in the pavements and dividers across benches, preventing sitting down and resting. And these particularly affect the homeless, as Tessa has mentioned. And then there's the lovely mosquito machines. I don't know if you're aware of those, but these are special machines which they're designed to send out high-pitched signals, very high frequencies, which are actually inaudible to the adult ear. But for children and young people, they're very audible and sometimes excruciatingly so. And they are deliberately used and positioned to disperse young people from prime profit-making hotspots, such as outside major storefronts. And then, as has already been referred to this weekend, there are more surveillance cameras per head of population in Britain than anywhere else in the world. Our cities are designed to be hostile to young people, and young people are criminalised by design. Unless young people can participate in the capitalist consumer narrative, they're excluded from public space and they are forced underground. And so they occupy the dark corners, the cracks, the waste grounds and the backwaters of the city. They write their names on walls and buildings and under bridges. I was here. They are asserting their existence in this hostile environment. And sometimes, when the only other spaces that are available to them, such as home and school, are also as hostile, sometimes graffiti is just not enough to exert your existence, and young people are driven to extreme behaviours. Last week, I think his name is Ali Somboi, a lonely, bullied, isolated 18-year-old, now referred to in the media as the Munich gunman, shot dead 9 people, most of them fellow teenagers. And I couldn't help by being struck by the bleakness and the pathos of his choice of place in the world on which he chose to make his mark, which was outside McDonald's. And that somehow struck me as one of the saddest parts of the story. So I'm going to digress now a bit from this somewhat bleak outlook for a more positive antidote to that. And I'm going to take you now to a much nicer place, North Korea. In fact, to the border between North and South Korea. The border between North and South Korea is 250 kilometers long. And for the past 50 years, it's been called the Korean Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ. And along the 250 kilometers of the border are two fences, and these are 4 kilometers apart. So you have this corridor of land that has been totally inaccessible to human activity for the last 50 or so years. And what this has created is what's called an involuntary park, which has become one of the most well-preserved areas of temperate habitat in the world. Several endangered animal and plant species now exist among the heavily fortified fences, the landmines, and the listening posts. And these include the extremely rare red-crowned crane, which apparently appears a lot in Asian art. I don't know whether that is the kind that appears in a lot of Chinese art. And the white-naped crane. And ecologists believe there is evidence that the extremely rare Siberian tiger, the Amur leopard, and the Asiatic black bear are also living at home there. Ecologists have identified some 2,900 plant species, 70 types of mammals, and 320 kinds of birds, all within the narrow buffer zone. So I think that's a nice story from North Korea. And back in Birmingham, inspired by this, I realized that what we were looking for with the GAP was our own demilitarized zone, and a crack that we could get a foothold in and start to force open a gap and start to attract all kinds of local young wildlife where they could graze and settle and thrive. And so our search was on. We found a variety of solutions, none of them long-term or sustainable. For example, an empty office block for which we had the entire floor, which was vast, which might sound great. But we were there by virtue of our temporary presence as a charity, because it saved the landlord thousands of pounds in rates relief until he could find a paying tenant. Then in early 2015, we did find a promising space, but we'd had to move a little outside the city centre. And this was a space, it was an old factory that was being used as a co-working space by a number of different kinds of people. So we decided, right, this is the compromise, and we signed the contract. And then the day before we were due to move in, the fire inspector came along and condemned the whole building. So we continued to be frustrated, but we were undeterred, and we decided that it didn't matter how big a space, we just needed a space. So we managed to secure a small amount of funding, and we went to the Birmingham Indoor Markets, which are right at the heart, they're very historic markets in the centre of Birmingham city centre. And we persuaded the market manager to let us have a market stall. You all know the size of a market stall. It was tiny. But we created a mini arts centre in that space, and we held a 2-week festival of arts and creativity there. We had craft, music, art activities, we did creative technology, poetry, play readings, even theatre, and more. It was a very small space, but we used the opportunity to experiment with how you can make a space flexible, and how you could really, take advantage of its versatility. At the end of those 2 weeks, when we had to move on again, and we went back to meeting in our homes and in coffee shops and in borrowed corners, we decided on a set of criteria. We wanted the space that we were looking for to not only physically serve what we needed, but we wanted a space to serve our values. And we created a set of criteria in order to aid the process. Firstly, it needed to be accessible to all young people, and so we recommitted ourselves to being in the city centre, which is a really important thing because there are many, I'll mention later, there are many different communities and young people from all over the city who have very different backgrounds, and it was really important to us that we attract people from everywhere. So only one bus journey for everybody. It also had to be affordable, obviously, and we needed it to be flexible and adaptable. So we were looking for somewhere we could perform in, we were looking for somewhere where we could exhibit in, and we were looking for somewhere we could do workshops in. And to cut a very long and boring story short, possibly, 6 months later we did come across a building, which is in the city centre, in a neglected top floor space that seemed to have all the potential to foot the bill. And we signed a tenancy contract at the beginning of this year. And the next thing we did was put together a team of young people to help us to co-design a space with the brief of what makes a space conducive to creativity. On the 6th of May, you can answer that for yourselves, by the way, it's very interesting. Lots of different ideas. On the 6th of May, we opened the Gap. And it's a large 2-room space with natural light, with big windows and a fantastic view over the south of Birmingham. We have flexible staging for performance work. We've got lots of gallery wall space, a workshop room, which doubles as a pop-up cinema. And we have individual workspaces for individuals to come and work on their own projects, and a social space for relaxing. We've also got a team of young programmers who've begun to program regular sessions according to what their interests are. So we've had regular life drawing sessions, craft workshops, and film nights. And we held all our Facing the Gap preparatory sessions in the rehearsal space there. And Aaron is planning to start in September a youth theatre group for South Asian boys in September. Big Brum recently came, in fact, the day that we came to Budapest, in the morning they came and performed Macbeth to a group of home-educated children, of which there are many in Birmingham. And we have planned with them more performances and TIE programmes for the coming school year. We've also had a full programme of exhibitions, and there is a lot of demand for wall space from young artists. And in August, when we go back, we will be beginning regular creativity sessions with young refugees. We also plan to do STEM-related, that's science, technology, and something, sciencey things, creative sciencey things, with younger children, sort of 11 to 16. And one young man has started his own Minecraft cafe club there. So, as you can see, what we decided to do was, because we didn't constantly need a big space, we regularly needed a big space, but we had space to share. So we have made it open to other young people, and they come and do their projects there, and we're building a community. And one activity I do want to mention, because this is one that we didn't expect to be running at the Gap, and that's what we've called our Civil Courage workshops. Another interesting fact you may or may not know about Birmingham is that it is a highly multicultural population. In fact, 238,000 plus of Birmingham's 1 million population were born outside of the UK. That's nearly 1 in 4. I was surprised at that. School children come from 87 different ethnic groups, and they speak 108 different languages. And this is the pride of Birmingham. Birmingham people are very, very proud of the diversity of the city. However, since Britain voted to leave the EU, you may have heard there's been a serious spike in hate crime. And suddenly, the city is a divided place. So I went and spoke with Chris about this idea I had, and together we have developed what we're calling these Civil Courage workshops. And we never thought we'd use drama in this way, but we're using drama to help prepare people, and we're not just opening it for young people, but for participants, preparing them to explore situations, so preparing them to speak out against hate crimes, to consider what different responses you might give, how to protect victims, and how to defend the community. And so we've added these to the repertoire of work that we're doing at the Gap. And The Gap is, as I say, it's an independently run youth-led space, and it is now, and always was, the only art space that's dedicated to young people's creativity in the whole of Birmingham. And what we found is that now that we've got some space, lots of people are interested in us, and that space begets space. And we not only have the physical space, but it's also given us space in time. It's given us space to think, to develop and grow as an organisation. We have never been so productive, and we've never been so available to support other young people in their projects. We've never been so accessible. We open 6 days a week. We operate a really cheap membership scheme, and it's open to anyone. It sounds great, but it's never that simple, is it? So the issue that we have is that whilst we're in it at the moment, it's all hunky-dory. It's all great. Sorry, translators. But come the autumn, we've got issues. There's no running water in this space. So we operate this really charming slop bucket system. And we fight over who's going to empty it. And a bigger problem is that there's no heating whatsoever. And we're on the top floor, and we have the ceiling and then the sky. And we have very old windows which aren't double glazed. And we know from when we first visited it back in January, February, that it's really cold. So come the autumn months, it's really going to be unworkable as a space. And so we started a crowdfunding campaign recently to raise £10,000 that we need to install infrared panels and a kitchen. So whilst for the best possible pedagogical reasons I didn't have a PowerPoint presentation, I do have a video which, if you'd be interested in seeing it, you will get a sense of what the space is like. You'll see Aaron and Maria speaking and explaining about it. You'll see some other young people and the kinds of things that we're doing there. So would you like to see it? Yeah, okay. It is our crowdfunder campaign, Phil. So, but I do want to take this chance, if that's okay, to publicly thank those individuals and some companies here who have really generously donated into that fund to help us. We know that the field that you work in, like we do, is not the most affluent, and so we really, really do appreciate everybody here who's donated. We've set our target at 10,000. We're almost at 6,000, and we've got about 5 days to go. So let's see. But I think Adam's got it now.
Trying hard.
Okay.
I don't know why something's frozen. Sorry, just say a joke. Good, it's coming.
I don't know many Hungarian words, sorry. I've had a bad teacher.
Sorry, can we go?
Yeah, thank you. Apologies to, I don't know if there was any translation for that, so sorry about that. But sorry for the shameless showing of that video. If anybody is interested in finding out more, please, Maria and Aaron are both here, and you can speak to me as well, and we'd be very happy to talk to you more about it. Thank you.